The Mariana Trench is the deepest place on Earth, so deep that if you dropped Mount Everest into it, the peak would still be over a mile underwater. Down there, the pressure is intense enough to crush most machines like a soda can, and the cold is just above freezing, which messes with both electronics and anything trying to survive. It's basically the most extreme environment on the planet, and barely anyone's ever seen it up close. Here's why this ocean trench is more dangerous than any other on Earth. The Mariana Trench is under enormous pressure thanks to the weight of all the water above it. At the deepest part, the pressure reaches about 16,000 pounds per square inch. That's over 1,000 times the pressure we experience at sea level. Imagine standing at the bottom of a very tall building and having the weight of that building pushing down on you. That's the kind of force the trench creates. When you think of it that way, it's a lot scarier, isn't it? This pressure affects everything. It shapes the landscape on the ocean floor, and it limits what kind of equipment can be used, limits what kind of life can survive down there. Any device or vehicle designed to explore it needs to be strong enough to handle the pressure without getting crushed. That's a big engineering challenge, and it's why deep-sea exploration requires specially built pressure-resistant vessels. And like I touched on, creatures that live in the trench have adapted with flexible bodies and special chemicals in their cells to handle the weight. The Mariana Trench is also extremely cold. The water temperature near the bottom is just above freezing, about 34 degrees Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius. Most animals we know can't survive in such low temperatures, especially with the crushing pressure. But some animals are designed to work differently than anything we see on the surface. For example, some fish produce this kind of antifreeze-like substance in their blood which stops ice crystals from forming. For machines, the cold can affect electronics and materials, making it harder to keep everything working properly. Batteries lose power faster, some materials become brittle, so any submersible or robot designed to explore this deep down has to be built to withstand not just the pressure but also the freezing temperatures. Because of how cold it is, life in the trench moves slowly and is very efficient with how it uses its energy. One of the biggest challenges when sending vehicles down into the Mariana Trench is staying in contact. Radio waves, which we use for most communication on the surface, don't travel well through deep water. This means submersibles can't just send signals back to ships or control centers like airplanes or satellites do. Instead, these underwater vehicles usually rely on physical cables or very short-range signals, which can easily be damaged or lost in such extreme conditions. If a cable breaks or the connection drops, the vehicle can become completely isolated, making it impossible to guide or get information from it. This is obviously a huge risk. Operators have to plan for the possibility that their vehicle could be out of touch for hours or even permanently. Because of this, a lot of deep dives rely heavily on pre-programmed instructions and just hope that everything goes as planned. The Mariana Trench sits right where two tectonic plates meet, the Pacific Plate and the Mariana Plate. The Pacific Plate is slowly being pushed beneath the Mariana Plate, a process called subduction. This is what created the trench, but it also makes the area very unstable. Because these plates are constantly moving, there's always a chance of an earthquake here. Some of these quakes can be strong enough to shake the sea floor, which changes the landscape underwater. These shifts can cause underwater landslides or sudden changes in the shape of the trench, making it a difficult place to navigate or study. Besides earthquakes, volcanic activity is common as well. Magma sometimes seeps up through the cracks in the Earth's crust, creating underwater volcanoes. When these volcanoes erupt, they can release hot gases and lava, which then alter the sea floor even more. Again, this just complicates things even further. Explorers have to plan for a constantly changing environment where the ground beneath them might move at any time. So sending machines to the Mariana Trench is not easy, and sometimes those machines don't make it. One of the most famous failures was the loss of the Nereus, a robot sub built to dive to extreme depths. In 2014, while exploring the Carmetic Trench, not far from the Mariana, it suddenly stopped responding, and when they recovered debris, it was clear the pressure had crushed it. The water down there is so heavy, it's like having several cars pressing down on every square inch of the vehicle. Even tiny cracks or weak spots can lead to an implosion. The Nereus was actually one of the most advanced underwater ROVs though, a remotely operated vehicle. So losing it was a big deal. It had previously reached the Challenger Deep, the trench's deepest point, proving it was up to the task, at least for a while. Besides this one, other submersibles have also had problems. For example, early models sometimes had issues with their pressure-resistant hulls, or electronics would fail because of the cold and crushing depths that would mess with wiring and materials. Down in the Mariana Trench, there are also these underwater hot springs called hydrothermal vents. Basically, super hot water shoots out of the cracks in the ocean floor. This water is heated by magma way below, and it's full of minerals and chemicals. Even though the water coming out can be crazy hot, like hundreds of degrees, it cools off fast once it hits the cold ocean water around it. What's also cool is that some tiny bacteria use those chemicals in the water to make food. They don't need sunlight like plants do. This creates a whole little community of weird sea creatures that live near the vents, things like giant tube worms and other creatures you don't see anywhere else. The trench also has mud volcanoes, which are basically spots where thick mud and gases bubble up from deep underground. They don't spew lava like regular volcanoes, but can change the ocean floor by covering it in mud and making it hard for some animals to live there. You might think the Mariana Trench, sitting miles below the surface, is completely untouched by humans, but that's not true. Researchers have found microplastics, tiny bits of plastic sitting on the seafloor. These particles come from everyday items like water bottles and bags that break down into smaller pieces and sink with the ocean currents. What's wild is how far these plastics travel. Ocean currents, storms, and waves carry them from cities and beaches across the world, where they eventually rest in the deepest parts of the ocean. Even the creatures living there aren't safe. Some animals accidentally eat these plastics, mistaking them for food. Besides plastics though, tiny amounts of other pollutants like chemicals and metals have been found as well. These can come from things like ship traffic, deep sea mining, or industrial runoff that eventually reaches the ocean. It's depressing, realizing that there's really no place on Earth that's completely free from pollution. The Mariana Trench is so deep that no sunlight ever reaches the bottom. It sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? The Mariana Trench is so deep. How deep is it? No sunlight ever reaches the bottom. I mean, it's not a funny joke. Anyway, what a pointless little tangent I went on. Anyway, after about 1,000 feet below the surface, the ocean gets almost completely dark. And by the time you reach the lowest parts of the trench, it's total blackness. It's darker down there than any night you've ever experienced. And this darkness shapes everything in the trench. Of course, the animals down there don't rely on vision. A lot of species don't even have eyes at all. Instead, they use other senses like touch, or they just sense vibrations in the water to find food or avoid predators. Other creatures create their own light through a process called bioluminescence, kind of like underwater glow sticks, which form out of their bodies. This light helps them communicate, attract prey, and scare off enemies, but even that light is faint and it only works over short distances. For humans and machines, the darkness is obviously not ideal. Not only is it just freaky as hell, but cameras and lights have to be specifically designed to work in such a pitch black environment. You'd think space would be the riskiest place for humans to reach, and when it comes to like deeper space travel in the near future, sure, you'd be right, but I think I'd prefer a mission to the International Space Station or even the moon over hunkering down in this tiny submersible and sinking down into the Challenger Deep. Only a few people have ever made it down there, and every single dive comes with serious risk. If anything goes wrong with the sub, one crack, one weak seal, it's over. When James Cameron went down solo in 2012, he was sealed inside a custom-built sub the size of a minivan, bolted shut from the outside. Inside, it got so hot and humid that he nearly passed out. That would have been bad down there. One malfunction in that dive would have had a very different ending. Victor Vescovo made several dives in 2019, but even with better technology, the danger didn't go away. The sub had to be stress tested like a spacecraft. The tiniest miscalculation could have meant disaster. The truth is, we've sent more people to the moon than to the bottom of this trench. It's just that dangerous. Every trip down there is a serious gamble, no matter how advanced the sub or experienced the crew. I've been your host, James, and I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.